Hi everyone. So we are continuing with core topic 3 this week, and we're looking at psychological triggers for food selection. So the main key idea that we're going to be focusing on today is that many factors influence the food choices and therefore our nutritional status. And we are looking at internal and external factors that influence people's choices and then as a consequence their nutritional status. So some of the things that we're going to be looking at are psychological factors. So these things include values as well as culture and beliefs, the attitude that someone might have, as well as a habit, past experiences, emotions, and self-image. So all of these psychological factors are formed and shaped through the life cycle and are influenced by varying degrees by society. So, looking at values, I'm sure all of you have values that you do hold very high and feel that it's worthwhile. So, when people value their health, they will tend to make diet and lifestyle choices that promote good health and will encourage that to their family and friends. So, I'm sure you've all probably told your parents or your friends at some stage about their what you're learning about in nutrition, and you might pass that on and because that's important to you. So the Australian government does value good health and promotes it through the dietary guidelines that we've been looking at the last couple of weeks. So culture also impacts on the dietary choices that we make. So it's the type of meal that might be served. So depending on where you live in the world, your culture might be that you have potatoes with every meal, or you might have rice or pasta. Also, your patterns of eating. So having a main meal for breakfast or for dinner. I actually have one of my colleagues, he has a very light lunch and actually has a heavier dinner because of the culture that he was brought up in. Also, the how food is eaten. So, some of you may know how to use chopsticks, and that depends again on the culture. And sometimes culture does actually lead to food restrictions, and we are going to look at some of those restrictions because culture and religion are quite closely linked. So, there are uh, you can, if you want, have a look at Peter Menzel, which he is a photographer that visited 24 countries for Hungry Planet. The link is in the PowerPoint, looking at what different countries would consume in a week. So it's quite interesting to look at perhaps the variety of food, how much of it is junk food in comparison to, say, fresh fruit and veg, the types of meats that are consumed. So if you wanted to have a look at that one, if you're a bit curious, the link is in the notes section of this slide. So we do have beliefs, so that's based on what people believe to be true, and usually they're based around religious ideas. So as I said previously, some beliefs do lead to food restrictions, so it's really important that you plan all of your food to make sure that you are still meeting all of your nutritional requirements, particularly if you're removing uh, specific nutrients like meat, for example. So one of the beliefs is Hinduism, and they refuse to kill uh, any living being. So they actually tend to mostly be strictly vegetarians, and they most definitely avoid beef. And that also means that they do use its milk, but they don't eat the actual meat. So they need to make sure, particularly if most of them are vegetarian, that they have a good understanding of complementary proteins to make sure they're getting all of their nutrients. So Islam is another belief, and they have Ramadan, which some of you may have heard of, which is where they fast from dawn till dusk for 30 days. They don't have any pork or pork products, and alcohol is not to be permitted either. So in as well as in Islam, the milk products that they consume have to be rennet free, which is the enzyme that's found in a stomach of a cow. And all meat must be slaughtered in a specific way, which is called halal meat. So another belief is Judaism, and they will eat meat, but it has to be kosher. So that's where the animal is slaughtered in a particular way that limits the pain of the animal. They don't eat pig, so they don't eat any pork or pork products. And they also don't eat any octopus, shellfish, or squid because they believe that all fish must have scales and fins in order to be eaten. So if they're looking at kosher in terms of eating, you can only have dairy or only meat, and they usually have to be eaten several hours apart from one another and using separate kitchen equipment as well. And like Islam, the milk products need to be rennet free. So Buddhism is another belief, and most Buddhists are vegetarian or vegan, which means again that they have to make sure they have a good knowledge and understanding of complementary proteins. So I'm sure all of you have different attitudes or habits that determine what you select. So that influences what you eat. So, for example, an habit would be that for breakfast time you have cereal. Now, that's also an attitude because you, for cereal, sorry, for breakfast you eat cereal. That is the habit, that's the attitude, which is really not based so much on the actual nutritional status of the food either. However, if you don't like to eat in the morning, your habit will be to skip breakfast altogether. So, family and society will influence on your habits and attitudes around food. And you can change the attitudes and habits, but it takes quite a long time to do that. So you would have heard maybe if you ask your parents about what some of the attitudes or habits they had around food back in when they were your age, I can guarantee you that there's definitely some differences in what they would have been eating. So, I would like you to think about some attitudes and habits that actually influence what and when you eat at home. So, I'm going to put this into the before lesson work, so I'm not going to go through it now. So, what habits have influenced what and when you eat? Has microwave changed your food choices? Fast food outlets? Do you sit down? So, how do you actually eat your meals? And how often do you go out for food? And list any other changes. So, I'll put this in the before lesson work. So, past experiences also might deter a person from selecting a particular food. So, I actually used to have a pretty strong aversion to coffee because when I was younger, I went to sneak what I thought was a massive tablespoon of Milo. Turned out I was actually sneaking a massive tablespoon of instant coffee, and I ate that raw. And for a very long time, I did not like the taste of coffee, as I'm sure you can probably imagine. So it took me a long time from forcing myself to drink coffee when I started to go to university to actually enjoying coffee. So I enjoy coffee now, but I didn't used to. And it's the same for happy memories as well. So if you've got something that you were eating when you had a really good, happy experience, that can then make you feel happy again when you consume it. So I might get you to ask to think of some examples of past experiences that could either be positive or negative. So emotions do impact on the food that we consume. So everyone's probably heard of emotional eating. So you might eat to make yourself feel better, and it's usually as a way of comforting yourself if you're feeling lonely or depressed or stressed. And sometimes emotions might influence your food choices positively or negatively. So if and some of you may have done this, eaten a whole block of chocolate in one sitting if you were feeling bad, or you've grabbed the tub of ice cream and so started eating it out of the tub. Those are probably examples where your emotions may have negatively impacted on your food choices. And the last one is body image. So if you are concerned about your body image and there's a huge issue, particularly in the teenage years about body image that can lead to dangerous diets and weight loss methods, as well as low self-esteem and eating disorders. We have this huge issue in media, particularly social media, where you must look a certain way, and if you don't look that way, a lot of people want to strive to look like that because it's what is socially acceptable or what to aim for. So some of the stereotypes that exist might include women that are tall and very thin, whereas for men it might be that they're muscular and they have to be masculine. And it's not just women, it's men as well. So men have the body image issues too. And then you've got things like Photoshop that really aren't helping with that either. So Brittany, poor Brittany, she's been photoshopped, not horrifically, but I'm sure you've seen some of the other ones. So she's got a smaller waist now, she's got slimmer thighs, all of her little flaws along her legs, which are fine, have been removed, and they've made her look more appealing. And the same can be said for poor old Justin Bieber, what Calvin Klein did to him through Photoshop to make him appeal more to what they wanted him to look like in terms of body image, then leads a lot of young men to then think that they have to look like that, and that will then impact on their nutritional status as well.